Beneath the idyllic facade of Ohio's rolling hills and picturesque landscapes, a sinister reality festers. Prepare to be unnerved as we venture into the heart of seemingly innocent small towns, where darkness lingers and unspeakable horrors have unfolded. From unsolved mysteries and chilling disappearances to haunting legends and eerie folklore, these communities harbor secrets that will send shivers down your spine. Uncover the disturbing truths lurking beneath the surface of these towns, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs.
Number 10. The Bissman Building. The Bissman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Brewer Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building, though, is haunted. While here many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows, and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl, Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah, 12. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn.
At number 10 is the Gore Orphanage. There's this place called the Gore Orphanage in Vermilion? I'm not from Ohio, I don't know. Vermilion, and it's got a spooky reputation that's been hanging around for ages. Picture this, back in the early 1900s, a gnarly house fire burnt down this building, and it's game over for everyone inside. Now, the story goes that the ghosts of these poor souls are still lurking around, both in the building and in the woods nearby. People who've dared to venture there have reported some wild stuff, like laughter and cries echoing place. But here's where it gets even crazier. It was a satanic cult spot where they did some messed up rituals, while others think it's just a messed up orphanage with no supernatural vibes. Now, I gotta say that there's no hard evidence to back up these claims, but the legend lives on, my friends. Ghost hunters and paranormal buffs keep rolling in, even though it's a no-go zone because it's technically private property. So, you know, spooky stuff happens in Ohio too. At number 9, the Spring Grove Cemetery. Cemeteries are like a magnet for spooky stuff, and the Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, Ohio is no exception. It's like the second biggest cemetery in the whole US of A, which is like prime real estate for ghostly shenanigans. One story that stands out is about this dude named C.C. Brewer, who was like an optometrist. Before he kicked the bucket, however, he was all, yo, take my eyes out and stick them on my gravestone. But relax, because they're not real eyes, just some glass ones. But people swear those fake eyes follow them around like a creepy optical illusion. And then there's this caretaker who was all alone one night and something tugged at his pants. The dude freaked out and bolted and came back later thinking he'd find like a snake or something, but nope, just graves. If you're enjoying the video so far, you could support the channel by subscribing to Most Amazing and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Lima Tuberculosis Hospital. This place opened its doors back in 1911, dealing with the gruesome tuberculosis cases of the time. In the 60s, they slapped the name Ottawa Valley Hospital on it, but it didn't stick around for long, because it shut down in the 70s. Now picture this, it's a hospital that's been abandoned for over 5 decades. It's like a real-life horror movie set, crumbling and sinister. But the real kicker is that people claim some of the patients who met their unfortunate end at this hospital might still be lurking around. Yep, you heard me right. Ghost hunters eager to get a scare have snuck in and swear they've seen spirits roaming the haunted hallways. Trespassing here is a big no-no though, so don't go thinking about your own ghost hunting adventure there, unless you're a rule breaker. But hey, as long as the place is still standing, it's hands down one of Ohio's most bone-chilling haunts. At number 7 is the Hook Man. This spine-tingling Ohio legend in the village of New Richmond. He's a ghastly figure with a hook for a hand. Yeah, the classic hook-handed ghost story, but Ohio's got its own twist on it. There's this doctor and his wife living on Pond Run Road. They had a mentally disturbed son locked up in the basement most of the time. And one stormy night, lightning strikes their house, turning it into an inferno. When the authorities show up, their parents are toast, but no sign of the boy. Just a severed hand chained to the wall. Creepy, right? Now the boy grows up lurking the woods, stealing from nearby homes. Couples end up unalived, and folks think it's the Hook Man's doing. Classic stuff, like a couple making out in the car, hearing a weird noise, and the guy decides to investigate, but bam! Hooked to the cranium. At number 6, the Coyne Mansfield incident. So picture this, it's 1973 in Mansfield, Ohio, and you've got these 4 National Guard dudes just chilling in a helicopter doing their thing. But then, out of nowhere, bam, they spot this massive metallic frisbee looking thing up in the sky. I mean, UFO alert. These guys aren't your average UFO spotters though. They're trained military pilots, so they know their stuff. And guess what? This mysterious disc isn't just hanging out. It starts creeping towards them. Panic mode activated. They dodge and weave, but the UFO just won't quit. It's like playing tag with an ET, but way less fun. They report the whole shebang, and even the military and the FAA think it's legit. Radar data and ground witnesses back up their story too. But here's the kicker. Nobody can explain what the heck that thing was. UFO or not, it's a spine-tingling story that still haunts Ohio's history.
Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6. The Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5. Woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no from me. Number 4. Ridges Asylum. Ridges Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building is the outline of a body where Margaret Shrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Mackey's. Built in 1850, Bobby Mackey's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange, suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams, and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Sedamsville Rectory. The Sedamsville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it. Number 10. Malibar Farm. Malibar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Louis Bromfield and was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Staley Road, a challenged young woman who lived there with her family, developed a romantic fixation on a neighborhood boy. When Staley's family told her to stop claiming the boy as her fiancé, she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and brother died, but her mother survived. At her trial, Staley couldn't understand why her parents didn't come to see her. After all, she said, the rats always came back after her daddy fed them rat poison in the barn. Afterwards, she went on and lived with her mother, whom, yes, she tried to kill, but then Staley poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Staley stood trial truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life in an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Staley Road outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. Yeah. No kidding. Number 9. Beaver Creek State Park. Although this park is beautiful during the day, it has a darker side at night. A portion of the park was once part of a canal system from the early 1800s. There are 2 locks that are said to be haunted. Jake's Lock is said to be named after a former canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top of the lock. He died instantly, but some claim that on certain nights, especially stormy ones, Jake returns with his ghostly lantern to continue his evening's work. Spooky. Nearby, Gretchen's Lock is said to be haunted by the ghost of a canal worker's daughter. Legend has it her father put her coffin inside the lock until he could load her body onto a ship headed for their homeland. But when the coffin was loaded onto a ship bound for home, the ship was lost at sea and didn't make it. Gretchen, pleading to rejoin her mother, reportedly makes an appearance at the lock every year on the anniversary of her death, which is just very sad. Number 8. The Wandle House. The Wandle House was constructed in 1916 by the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway with funds contributed by railroaders. The Brewster Railroad YMCA featured 62 dormitory rooms used by the railroad workers, a restaurant, movie theater, and bowling alley. Today, the building is home to the Historical Society and houses memorabilia from baseball team photos, class pictures from Beach City and Brewster schools, railroad memorabilia and equipment, payroll records, and military uniforms. It's filled with tons of history, so those from the past like to visit. While there, you might come across Teresa, who worked in the eatery around the 1940s and 50s. People have also reported hearing noises, seeing doorknobs turning on their own, and dark figures. And even one time, someone who was doing work in the basement of the building watched a person walk through a wall. Let me just say, I've seen a ghost walk through a wall before too, and it's creepy, so it's not something I'd like to see again. Number 5. Franklin Castle. Rumors about the Erie Castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tideman family while living in the mansion. Hans, the father, allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Louisa, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s, and he would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they'd encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking blankets off their bed, and Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974 they did, but the hauntings didn't stop when they left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Unfortunately, this house is privately owned, so you cannot go and explore all the spookiness, but there is a lot of rich history here. Number 4. Warner and Swayze Observatory. The Taylor Road Observatory was gifted to the Case School of Applied Science in 1919 by the Warner and Swayze Telescope Company. The original building was a domed tower construction with a powerful telescope that took advantage of the relatively undeveloped Cleveland sky that was at the time much more free of light pollution. The site continued to develop in the decades, growing with more buildings and facilities, but unfortunately by 1950, the growth of the nearby city was shining too much ambient light into the night sky, and the telescope had to be moved to a new location in Arizona. The Taylor Road facility continued to conduct astronomical research in the 1970s, but the site was completely abandoned in 1982. Vines and decay accumulated on the walls as time and neglect took their toll on the observatory. However, it was finally repurchased in 2005 by real estate mogul Nair Al-Mahid, who planned on returning the site into a luxury home. Unfortunately, his renovation didn't happen because in 2007 he was convicted of fraud and sent directly to jail. Today, the observatory continues to stand off Taylor Road, and it's best not to trespass and enter the building though because the area is unsafe. Number 3. The Peters Cartridge Company. The Peters Cartridge Company was once an integral part of the local munitions production industry, but now the factory is abandoned. Built in the 1860s, the large building complex was established to support the Peters Cartridge Company. The factory began producing shot and cannonballs for the Union Army during the Civil War, and then continued to produce American munitions into the 1950s. The factory had a lot of accidents though. In 1890, several train cars loaded with gunpowder collided and exploded, ending the lives of 20 factory workers. There were a number of fires and machinery accidents as well, leaving employees maimed and physically disabled. Before the factory finally closed, the site was repurposed to press vinyl for Columbia Records, but eventually nothing was made of the tall brick buildings. As the factory buildings are extremely decayed, local police supervise the Peters Cartridge Company closely. Urban exploration is not advised as floorboards are rotten and elevator shafts are empty in the buildings. Number 2. Helltown. Yep, you heard that right. Why anyone would want to go to Helltown with a name like that, I have no clue. Founded in 1806, Boston Village, aka Helltown's claim to fame was that it was standing as the oldest village in Summit County. Boston's relatively uneventful life took for a turn for the worst in 1974 when the National Park Service decided that Boston Township would be the new home for a new national park and began buying the properties of its longtime residents. The empty homes were boarded up and adorned with US no trespassing signs. But then the government quickly fell behind on its plan to create the park and the village sat neglected. The hellish aura of the area only continued to grow when rangers visiting the site became ill and covered in rashes. It was soon discovered the dump was highly polluted with toxic chemicals improperly disposed of. Also in the village there is a church which is said to have been built by Satanists complete with upside down crosses. There's an abandoned bus that is said to be host to a lingering ghost, and maybe the most outlandish of all, there is talk of mutants who were created by the chemical spill, including a monstrous snake known as the Peninsula Python. And coming in at number 1, Lima Tuberculosis Hospital. The Lima Tuberculosis Hospital was a tuberculosis sanatorium built in 1911 to deal with the leading causes of death in the United States in the early 20th century. Opening in 1911, it held 24 beds originally and was remodeled in 1927 to hold 158 beds. The capacity changed to 138 patients after an additional remodel occurred in 1957. The hospital was then renamed Ottawa Valley Tuberculosis Hospital in 1960, and by 1970 it was nearly empty. In 1972, the use of the second floor was shuttered and the entire hospital closed its doors in 1973. While the hospital was winding down operation on January 10, 1972, it was agreed that the hospital would be transferred to the Allen County Board of Commissioners. Because of its relatively remote location and the use of hard-to-clean-up substances such as asbestos in the construction of the original 1911 building, the city of Lima did not prioritize demolition of the building. It's rumored to be haunted as well, and around Halloween of 2020, a large surge of trespassing at the site occurred, which led to an increased police presence and crackdown on trespassers. So don't even think of trying to visit. Number 10. Seelbach Hilton. It's said at the Seelbach Hilton, if you take an elevator, a mysterious woman may greet you. According to the Historic Hotels of America website, in 1987, a chef working in the hotel saw a woman with dark hair wearing a long blue dress walk into an elevator with the doors still closed. Moments later, a housekeeper on another floor saw the same woman get into the elevator with closed doors. Now, who is this woman? Well, they think they have a theory. A 1936 newspaper report said a woman learned of her husband's death in an automobile accident as she waited for him at the hotel. So upset by the news, she jumped to her death in the number 3 elevator. She was also reported to have been seen wearing a long blue chiffon dress. So is this the mystery lady? I think so. Number 9. Geauga Lake Amusement Park. What once was the world's largest theme park is now an overgrown land of decaying roller coasters, empty concession stands, and abandoned ticket booths. In 1925, the Big Dipper roller coaster was built, and it was an absolute hit. At the time, it was the largest coaster ever built, but soon tragedy struck. In 1942, the park was hit by a tornado, 6 people were injured, and the park experienced a lot of structural damages that cost around $1,000. Further tragedy struck in 1952 when a massive fire engulfed parts of the park, destroying many key features of the park, including the famous dance hall, the theater, the roller rink, and the bowling alley, with damages amounting to $500,000. From 2000 to 2004, the park was expanded and became Six Flags Ohio, and from 2004 to 2007, it became known as Geauga Lake again under the ownership of Cedar Fair. But on September 21st, 2007, Cedar Fair announced the park would not be reopening, and it has been abandoned ever since. The only thing left standing at the former amusement park is the Big Dipper roller coaster, and with that much tragedy there, it's no wonder this place is haunted. Number 8. The Phantom Car on Route 40 to Englewood. In the 1950s, people would be driving along the highway and see a green-tinged lit-up skeleton supposedly driving a car on Route 40. At least 5 stories of the Phantom Traveler have been reported to the local state highway patrol, many claiming the Phantom driver seemed to be challenging truck drivers to play chicken along the narrow and dangerous stretches of the highway. The Phantom allegedly wrote a letter to Sheriff J. Arthur Sherman of Clark County, daring the sheriff to chase him. Many think it's just a prankster, perhaps someone who is mentally ill, but regardless, this is still extremely creepy. Number 7. Wittenberg University. Historic Wittenberg University, chartered in 1845, has its share of spine-chilling tales, most notably one about a ghostly horse. The top floor of Myers Hall at Wittenberg University was used as a hospital for Civil War soldiers. Legend has it that a general, realizing he was about to die, requested that his faithful horse be brought to him. After saying goodbye to his companion, the general died, but the horse would not leave his side and was shot by soldiers. It's said that the sound of hoofbeats and neighing of the horse searching for its master can still be heard on the campus, which is like so cute but so sad, and a ghost horse sounds pretty cool to me. I mean, come on.
At number 1. Have you ever heard of the place called Melon Heads from Ohio? It's like something straight out of a horror movie. A group of messed up, deformed folks with giant heads that look like melons. Freaky, right? Legend has it that they lurk in the woods around Kirtland, just waiting to give you the creeps. But here's the kicker. These poor souls were supposedly normal people once, but some evil mad scientists messed them up real bad with cruel experiments. They managed to escape, and now they're hiding out in the woods, surviving by hunting and staying far away from society. Some stories say they're aggressive, attacking anyone who dares set foot on their territory. Others say they're more mysterious, popping in and out like ghosts in the woods. Either way, it's a chilling tale that'll make you think twice about going near those Ohio forests.
Number 6. Buckeye Charm. Buckeye Charm, a boutique owned by Jonah Powell, was once featured on the Travel Channel's paranormal investigation show Ghost Nation because it was so haunted. The property was built in 1877 as St. Augustine's Catholic Church. In 1976, the church was sold to become a commercial building. Now, during the filming, a loud EVP, electronic voice phenomenon recording was captured in the building. The word words, "Hallowed be thy name." The crew was concerned that the voice was a staged prank, Jonah recalled, because it was so loud and so clear, and they've had times in the past where people have tried to trick them or do something. So they had their crew shut down, turn on the lights, stop what they were doing, and search for speakers just to make sure it wasn't something that we were pulling over them. The ghost hunters suspected that a disgraced priest may be behind the scratches, bizarre apparitions, and the EVPs. Number 5. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse. Waynesville Union Schoolhouse was built in 1891 and is currently used for storage by the American Legion Hall. After the newer school was built up the hill, they shut it down and put the town library on the first floor. In the basement, the American Legion had their bar where all the guys went. It was the only place in town where you could drink, and eventually they built a newer building over here, so the building is just sitting there. Nobody can decide what to do about it, how to save it or tear it down, said a townsperson. Since the place has heard stories about strange happenings in the basement, Lee Allen, a local paranormal investigator, was consulted. Lee brought a psychic from Columbus and she knew nothing about this town. A group was in the building with some of the people from the American Legion and Lee's team, and all of a sudden the psychic said, "There's some men here that don't want you ladies here in the basement at all in their Legion Hall. They want you to leave." Now the women knew it was a guy's place, but they didn't pay too much attention to what the psychic said until she said, "No, they're really serious, they want you to leave, this is not a place for ladies." Then a ghost touched one of the women's shoulders and they screamed. The psychic said their names are Ralph and Carl and they really seriously want you to leave, so they left. And I mean, if a ghost tells you to leave, you probably should. Later, the woman who had to leave said she told the story to a friend who grew up on the corner close to the American Legion and specifically mentioned Ralph and Carl. She said to me, "You're kidding me. Ralph Smith and Carl Siffer spend every day up there in the basement at the bar." Eventually, she heard Carl's wife say that if he was any place in town, that's where he'd be. Number 4. Poasttown Elementary School. Poasttown Elementary School was built in the 1930s and served as a place of education until the year 2000. It's a building in rural Ohio that is now known more for sightings of apparitions and spirits within its walls than it is for exams and detentions. It's believed that the reason for the hauntings could be linked to 2 separate train incidents in 1891 and 1910 that claimed 30 lives. Without a nearby hospital, the field where the school was built became a triage center. The theory is the spirits of those who died in the accident still remain on the land. Daryl Bissman, a former teacher who made Pottstown Elementary his home, told WCPO in 2016, "We'll hear a desk being dragged across the floor above us, we'll hear little kids' footsteps, I've heard voices with my own ears when nobody is here but me and my wife, I just can't explain it." Paranormal investigators have been called in, and the building is also used for community events. According to Daryl, most leave the school having experienced something strange. He says the school's motto is, "When you leave, you believe," and that honestly sounds perfect because that sounds terrifying. Especially hearing students' footsteps and voices, that is a no from me. Number 3. Helltown. Founded in 1806, Boston Village, aka Helltown's original claim to fame was its standing as the oldest village in Summit County. Boston's relatively uneventful life took a turn for the worse in 1974 when the National Park Service decided that Boston Township would be the new home for a new national park and began buying the properties of its longtime residents. The empty houses were boarded up and adorned with U.S. no trespassing signs. But then the government quickly fell behind on its plan to create the park and the village sat neglected. The hellish aura of the area only continued to grow when rangers visiting the site became ill and covered in rashes. It was soon discovered the dump was highly polluted with toxic chemicals improperly disposed of. Also, in the village there is a church which is said to have been built by Satanists complete with upside down crosses. There's an abandoned bus that is said to be the host to lingering ghosts, and maybe the most outlandish of all, there is talk of mutants who were created by the chemical spill, including a monstrous snake known as the Peninsula Python, so I would never want to visit there. No. Number 2. Dayton Masonic Temple. The Dayton Masonic Temple was constructed between 1925 and 1928, and it has wonderful architecture. A woman said she went for a tour there led by a man named George. "I sat down in a chair for a little bit, he scooped me up by the elbow and led me along," she recalled, saying that he guided her to a photo of Masonic's graduation classes over the years. "He directed me to a specific year and there he was in the picture. He was a jolly, portly gentleman. After the tour, she spoke with some Masonic officials who had brought her there to take her on the tour. One official in particular asked her stern questions about the areas she had toured. She mentioned the man, George, and the photo. The skeptical official asked her to show him the picture. When we got to the picture, he turned pale, she said. He said, "That's the guy I see around here all the time." So yeah, she got a tour from a ghost. And honestly, that's pretty cool because I'm sure he gave her some inside information about it all, but that's kind of spooky. And coming in at number 1 is Victoria Theatre. Victoria Theatre is 150 years old, and there have been many sinister events there. For example, the story of a touring actress in the early 1900s who went to her dressing room to change for the next scene and never came out of the room. No trace of her was found, though fewer and fewer actors would use that dressing room, with reports that some would look into the mirror and see her face staring back again. In the 1950s, a man ended his life in the theater by wedging a knife into a seat in front of him and throwing himself upon it. When the curtains around the left exit door are pulled, some people claim to see his face. Staff members through the years have said that they've heard strange noises like rustling of satin or suddenly smelt the scent of roses in the air. Others are said to have seen the ghost of the Victoria's founder when they're alone in the building. Diane Schofler-Warren, Victoria's spokeswoman, said that many of the historical theater's longtime volunteers and staff like to blame these strange occurrences on Miss Vicky, who was not a real person. Every theater has its legends, such as the legend you don't say Macbeth in a theater or the legend of the ghost light in the theater, she said. The ghost stories are particularly popular with the Victoria's volunteers, but as we all know, 99% of the time, you're not going to the theater to get goosebumps from ghosts, but rather from the fabulous performances. I don't know though, that sounds pretty terrifying to me.
And we're starting off this list today with the Werewolf of Defiance. It's the summer of 1972. 2 railroad workers were hard at work on the Norfolk and Western Railway when all of a sudden, one of them, Ted Davis, looked up to see a large wolf-like creature with a wooden board grasped between its paws, which it then whacked the man in the shoulder with before turning off into the bushes to run away like a coward. 5 days later, Ted and his coworker Tom Jones returned to the railway for another day's work, hoping they wouldn't be seeing the big furry monster again. Only they did. Only this time it was a bit of a safe distance away. Not that I'd ever feel a safe distance away from a werewolf, but that's just me. And then they reported the sightings to the police. Right around this time, more and more Wolfman sightings began piling in, and locals began to panic about the potential of being mauled by a 6-foot-tall werewolf. Imagine actually like feeling that was a possibility. Like you're heading out of the grocery store and you're like, damn, like really hope I don't run into a lycanthrope today. That's their life, apparently, in Ohio. Up next, we have the Loveland Frog. This mysterious creature has been reported to have been sighted in Loveland, Ohio. The amphibious creature is said to resemble a bipedal frog, standing upright on its hind legs, measuring up to 4 feet tall. Not that big, but pretty big for a frog, though. Got leathery skin, webbed fingers and toes. You all know how frogs look. And it's also got those iconic glowing large eyes. The first reported sighting of the Loveland Frog was in 1955, when a man claimed to have seen 3 of them on the side of the road holding some kind of strange wand-like device. Again, only in Ohio would you spot 3 large frogs practicing magic under a bridge. I really gotta visit Ohio sometimes. It just seems like such a fantastical place. Again, Narnia got nothing on Ohio. Anyway, since that initial 1955 sighting, there have been several other ones, including one by a police officer in 1972 who reported seeing a creature fitting the description of the Loveland Frog scuttling across the road and then hopping over the guardrail into the Little Miami River. Another officer even claimed to have shot at the creature, but it escaped. Some people believe the Loveland Frog is an escaped exotic pet or mutated frog, while others speculate that it is a supernatural type of creature. At number 8 on the list, we have Melon Heads. The Melon Heads are a group of cryptids that have been reported to have been sighted in various locations in Ohio, but are primarily found in the Cleveland suburb of Kirtland. These creatures are said to be small in stature with large, bulbous heads and distorted facial features. According to legend, they were the result of an experiment gone wrong in which scientists conducted unethical experiments on orphans, resulting in the creation of these strange bobble-headed beings. Some variations of the story also claim that the Melon Heads are the descendants of a family who suffered from a rare genetic disorder, maybe, that caused their heads to grow abnormally large. Some even say they could be of extraterrestrial origin, which whatever they are though, I want to see one. I'm telling you, I'm coming to Ohio to go on a full cryptid scavenger hunt, and I'd better see me a weird deformed melon head. And number 7, it's Bessie. The Bessie Lake Monster, or the Lake Erie Monster. It's a legendary creature that is said to inhabit Lake Erie. The creature is described as a big, similar in appearance to Loch Ness Monster, kinda long-necked, humpback, as well as a serpentine, kind of dinosaur-like body. The first reported sighting of Bessie dates back to 1973 when a duck hunter saw a large serpentine-like creature thrashing in the lake and startled by his gunshots. And since then, numerous sightings have been reported over the years. Some eyewitnesses claim to have seen the creature swimming close to their boats or even on the shore, while others have reported hearing strange, eerie sounds coming from the water. Despite many attempts to capture or study the creature, there is no concrete evidence of its existence. However, the legend of Bessie persists, and many people believe that there is something mysterious lurking beneath the surface of Lake Erie. When it comes to creatures that reside in the water, I gotta say, seems plausible. We don't spend a lot of time underwater, Lots could be lurking in those murky depths. You never know. Number 6, Mothman of Gallia County. Most of us have probably heard of the infamous Mothman. Large, winged, glowing red eyes. It was first reported in West Virginia in 1966, but one of the most famous sightings of this large flying insect was over the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia to the village of Gallipolis, Ohio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I think it's Gallipolis. This sighting happened just a year after the first reported Mothman sighting, and right around the time when the creature was spotted on the Silver Bridge, it collapsed. And some still believe that this mysterious cryptid was the one responsible. There have also been reported Mothman sightings before other big disasters, which has led some to speculate as to whether Mothman is a bad omen or if it is simply appears as kind of like a warning of impending doom, bad or good. Orange eyes. Now, this is a Sasquatch type creature that could very well be the same type of creature as a couple others we'll be discussing on the list. There are many Sasquatch variations seen throughout Ohio, but this one is famous for, as you could probably imagine, it's got these glowing orange eyes. There have been reports of strange creatures with orange eyes lurking in Ohio, said to reside in the Riverside Cemetery before moving to the woods by Mill Lake. Witnesses described the creature as resembling a large bipedal humanoid with a muscular build and a hunched posture. Its eyes, once again, seem to emit an otherworldly glow. The creature is reportedly very fast and agile and has been known to vanish into thin air when pursued. Some locals believe that Orange Eyes is a Bigfoot type creature, but there are also those theories that maybe a kind of supernatural being or extraterrestrial entity as well. At number 4, we have Dogman. Most Dogman reports come out of Michigan, but there have been sightings in Ohio as well. According to witnesses, the Dogman is a bipedal, wolf-like creature that stands between 6 and 7 feet tall with a muscular build and a snarling dog-like face. The first reported sightings of the Dogman in Ohio occurred in the late 1980s. Since then, there have been numerous other sightings reported in the state. Witnesses have reported seeing the creature hunting in the woods, stalking prey, even running across highways at high speeds. Some skeptics believe that the sightings, of course, may be misidentifications of known animals like bears or wolves, while others believe that the Dogman is a real undiscovered species that is yet to be officially documented by science. Number 3, the Crosswick Monster. Now, there's only one report of this cryptid, but it's quite the entertaining tale. It's like something out of a classic 1950s monster movie or something like that, and it's a pretty famous piece of Ohio cryptid folklore. The story goes that in 1882, two boys, Ed and Joe Lynch, began hearing strange sounds coming from the tall grass of a bush behind them. They were fishing, and then before they had time to think, a large four-legged lizard creature popped out from the bushes and began making its way toward them. The boys tried to make their escape, but it caught the 13-year-old Ed in its mouth and began dragging him towards a large hollowed-out out tree. 3 men had heard the boys screaming and managed to make it to Ed's aid before he was pulled into the tree, although he was badly injured. A group of about 60 men were formed, armed with axes and clubs, and they tried to slay the beast, but the creature managed to escape, actually standing on its hind legs at one point. Pretty horrifying. The group chased the creature, which retreated into a hole under a large hill of rocks. The creature was never seen again. Described as black and white in color and roughly 12 feet in length. Number 2, the Minerva Monster. This has to be one of the most famous Sasquatch sightings in Ohio. In August of 1978, in the village of Minerva, the first sighting of the creature was reported by the Caton family, who'd seen a large hairy creature in the gravel pit outside of their property, looking to be about 300 pounds. Soon became known as the Minerva Monster and terrorized the Caton family on more than one occasion. They described seeing it peering through their kitchen window one night. Awful. And when police came to investigate, they saw large footprints around their home with a terrible smell lingering in the air. The creature was also reported to have thrown rocks at their home one day, and they even reported seeing 2 large hairy bipeds on a hill by the strip mine near their property. The family has been adamant about what they saw ever since, and their story has remained consistent. It wasn't just the Catons who had run-ins with the large ape-like creature, though. Other locals began reporting seeing a similar creature in and around the Minerva area around the same time. And that's going to bring us to our number 1 spot, the Ohio Grassman. There's a very good chance that the Minerva Monster and Orange Eyes are the very same creature I'm describing here, as they're all big, all furry, ape-like creatures. Grassman is pretty much Ohio's nickname for Bigfoot, described as a large, hairy, bipedal creature standing between 7 and 9 feet tall. Grassman is said to have human-like face and a muscular build. Witnesses have reported hearing eerie vocalizations and howls coming from the woods, as well as seeing large footprints that they believe belong to the creature. The first reported sightings of the Ohio Grassman occurred in the late 1800s, but the creature gained widespread attention in the 1970s when multiple sightings were reported in the state. Since then, there have been numerous other sightings reported in the area, while some skeptics dismiss the sightings, of course, as misidentifications of, animals or even hoaxes. Others believe that the Grassman is real and he's an undiscovered species. And we're starting it off today with Pukwudgies. The Pukwudgie is a creature from Native American folklore that is said to inhabit the forests of the northeastern United States. According to legend, Pukwudgies are mischievous tricksters who can cause harm to humans if they are angered or offended. There have been a number of reported sightings of the creatures throughout Ohio. According to folklore, Pukwudgies are small, humanoid creatures that stand about 2 to 3 feet tall. They are said to have gray skin, large ears, and a large nose. Some legends also describe them as having quills or spines on their backs. They're believed to be skilled hunters and are said to use their magical powers to disappear and reappear at will. They're also said to have the ability to shapeshift into animals or objects. In some Native American traditions, Pukwudgies are viewed as protectors of the forest and are said to have the power to ward off evil spirits. However, in other legends, Pukwudgies are seen as mischievous troublemakers who enjoy playing pranks on humans. So if you do happen to see one, prepare to be clowned. Next on the list, we have the Cedar Bog Monster. Now, this is one of those cryptids that could very well be a Sasquatch, or of course a Grassman as it's known locally in Ohio. It's more of a name given to the specific place this creature was seen though. When Cedar Bog opened as a nature preserve in 1942, people immediately began flocking to the area to witness the various species of birds, the fish and plants, and just soak in the nature. But what they didn't expect or want to see was a large, hairy humanoid creature, but many did report seeing the big ape-like creature strolling along Woodburn Road, which runs right beside the bog. They reported that whatever the thing was too large to be a man. I'm also sure the fur and gorilla-like face kinda gave that away too, possibly. There was also an incident where 3 teenagers went missing in the park while on a camping trip. Apparently, there were reports of loud screams coming from Cedar Bog. At number 8, we have the Charles Mills Lake Monster. Now, there's only one reported encounter with this creature, but it's a pretty eerie story. On the night of March 28th, 1959. 1959 is going to come up a lot on this list, by the way. I don't know what it was about that year, but there was some stuff going on in Ohio. Anyway, 3 teenage boys had been hanging out around the Charles Mill Reservoir when they suddenly saw something forming out of the dark water before them. It was a 7-foot-tall humanoid that began moving towards them. It was described as having no arms, bright glowing green eyes, and webbed feet. The teens obviously booked it out of there and reported what they saw to authorities, who made their way to the area, where they came across footprints, if you could even describe whatever made the tracks as feet. They were large indents that appeared as if they were made by webbed feet. Who knows what this thing was? Even if it was real or just a hoax, there was indeed a large fishy monster skulking around the lake. I'm guessing it must have smelt like a sewer. Number 7, alien big cats. Alien big cats are a very real thing. These are big cats like panthers or leopards found outside of their natural environments. The alien part doesn't mean that these cats are from outer space, but then again, who knows how they got there, right? In 2011, there were several sightings of supposed alien big cats in and around Dayton, Ohio. A private zoo owner by the name of Terry Thompson had released upwards of 50 animals into the wild before, unfortunately, taking his own life in October of 2011, which resulted in, of course, several reports of large cats spotted throughout the area. 48 of them were either put under by police or sent off to Columbus Zoo. There had been reports of alien big cat sightings before these animals were known to be released, though, which is strange. Multiple sightings of black panthers dating back to April of 2011, and police would continue investigating sightings until around April of 2012. Phantom kangaroos. Alright, so we have big cats being reported in Ohio, so now we're moving on to kangaroos. Ohio's just full of dangerous wildlife, apparently. The phantom kangaroo is a cryptid that is said to resemble a kangaroo or wallaby and is believed to inhabit various parts of the world, including the United States. Basically, again, these are kangaroos showing up in places they shouldn't be, like Ohio. Except the stranger part is that these phantom kangaroos have been spotted where no escaped kangaroos have been reported. The creature is known for its elusive nature, as well as its ability to seemingly disappear without a trace and leave no evidence behind, almost like a ghost. A phantom kangaroo, if you will. Some experts believe that these sightings may be the result of misidentifications, of course, of other animals like large domestic dogs or coyotes, but I don't know, maybe there's some kind geese running around in Ohio. Number 5, devil monkeys. So yeah, it seems like there are all kinds of hairy apes and monkeys in Ohio as well. Who would have guessed? You got Grassman, who may or may not be Bigfoot, the hairy orange-eyed creature we talked about in part 1, and now this baboon-looking beast. The devil monkey is a cryptid that is believed to inhabit the forests and rural areas of North America, described as a large, aggressive primate-like creature with gray or black fur and red eyes. The devil monkey is known for its terrifying appearance and alleged attacks on humans and domestic animals. There have been numerous reports of sightings of the creature in Ohio and other parts of the US. Witnesses have described encountering a large bipedal creature that stands on 2 legs and resembles a monkey or baboon with a fierce expression and a tendency to attack without provocation. There are many folks that are convinced that the devil monkey is a real creature, and sightings continue to be reported until this day. Some cryptozoologists speculate that the devil monkey may be a new species of primate that is yet to be officially recognized, while others believe it could be a surviving member of a prehistoric primate species that was previously thought to be extinct. The Trumbull County UFO incident. Next up, we have a well-documented UFO sighting. There have been multiple UFO sightings in the state of Ohio, dating back a long ways, but this one is from 1994. I don't see why aliens wouldn't want to observe Ohio. Seems like there's a lot going on, as you could probably tell from these lists. Maybe they were hovering around, placing bets on what creature they'd spot first. Lots to choose from. There were were tons of witnesses to this odd event on December 14th, 1994. Citizens, multiple police officers, dispatchers. It was pretty significant. Multiple residents had reported seeing low flying lights in the sky. The first police officer on the scene, Sergeant Toby Malero, had a pretty odd incident. As he was moving closer to the odd lights in the sky, talking with the dispatcher the entire time, his radio suddenly stopped working and his vehicle just shut off before he was engulfed in a bright light from above. He exited his vehicle, not quite knowing how to go about this odd occurrence, and reported seeing a giant circular shaped object hovering in the sky, which apparently made no sound. Once the object flew away, his car and radio, bam, started working again. 14 other law enforcement officers also saw these mysterious UFOs that night, with one even climbing up on a radar tower for a better view, and then claimed to have seen 3 circular flying objects that changed color in unison. Number 3, Helltown. So while this one is a place and not actually a cryptid per se, it is reported to be an incredibly strange and dangerous place where all sorts of spooky happenings occur. Helltown has been left behind, now an abandoned town where nothing but empty homes, cathedrals, and unused bridges still stand, though there are some who are said to still reside there, such as ghosts, mutant animals, and cultists. The residents of the town formerly known as Boston, Ohio, had been forced to leave their homes in 1974 when President Gerald Ford signed a bill that gave the federal government's National Park Service jurisdiction to expropriate land for establishment of natural parks. The NPS began buying up properties, and eventually it was a ghost town. In the mid-80s, there were several chemical spills in Helltown that some believed resulted in the mutated animals spotted in the area. And apparently there's also a haunted school bus and stuff like that. Interesting place to go, I'd imagine. And at number 2, we have Octoman. On a cold Cincinnati night in January of 1959, police began receiving several reports of a strange octopus-like creature. It started with a man who called police in a panic, saying that he saw something come out of the river, calling it completely indescribable. This report was followed by one from a truck driver just soon after, claiming to have seen a strange creature while driving into Cincinnati. More and more reports began coming in, but it was hard for anyone to describe exactly what they were seeing. What police did note, however, was that the people calling about these encounters sounded pretty shaken up. Even though the police kind of didn't believe it, they were joking a little bit, that was one thing they did know. These people sounded like they did see something. The more reports that came in as well, the closer they would get to form a description of the creature. A very large creature with grayish skin, tentacles, and a lopsided chest. Sounds like a pretty attractive creature there. One person was stated as saying, "It was large, not a dog or a cat. It leaped in front of my car and on 2 legs and it was taller than the auto. When I looked back in my mirror, it was moving along the bridge rail. It was 3 or 4 times the size of a man and much bulkier. I have an eye in mind for dimensions, and I know it was huge." And coming in at number 1 is the Peninsula Python. Now, this is a really interesting one because it really did exist. Sure, it's not really a cryptid per se, but this was an incident that actually took place, and it's pretty wild stuff. The summer of 1944, people in Summit County, Ohio began spotting a massive-sized python in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It was reported being around 15 feet in length and incredibly thick. It was a python, definitely a real animal. It was just in the wrong part of the world, that's all. It's still kind of a mystery as to how it got there, but it's rumored that it was being transported through the area, possibly for a circus or something, but managed to escape. Residents were understandably pretty scared that summer as the giant snake roamed through farms, leaving giant tire-sized indents in its wake. It even attacked livestock. The python was also never found, just disappeared eventually. Most likely died curled up somewhere after succumbing to the Ohio winter though. And we're kicking off this list with a very recent Ohio Bigfoot report. This one is detailed on the BFRO, or the Bigfoot Field Researchers website, where there are tons of different eyewitness reports of the elusive beast, but this is a good one to start off with because it just happened back in January of this year. On January 22nd, 2nd, on a snowy afternoon in Warren County, Ohio, a family reported seeing a big creature standing near a bike path while they were driving down the road. The father of the family wrote, "As we were driving along State Route 350 towards State Route 123, south of Oregonia, we came to the Loveland bike trail that runs next to the Little Miami River. As I slowed down near the bike path crossing, we looked out the passenger side of the car and saw a large black figure standing a distance up the bike path facing the river while it was snowing. The ground was covered with at least 3 inches of snow, so it didn't appear that someone would be on the bike path biking or walking the trail. The weather was not ideal for anyone to be hunting or walking on the path at the time. The figure appeared to have come from the woods and was walking towards the river." He also described the figure as having no obvious clothing pattern, being consistently dark, and that his wife and 2 teenage children also spotted it. There have apparently been at least 9 credible sightings of a supposed Bigfoot-like creature in the same area too. Number 9, Bigfoot howls. In this video uploaded by We Do It Outdoors, we see our cameraman roaming through a forest in Lore City, Ohio. The sun is starting to set and we hear a series of strange, eerie howls and tree knocks. We Do It Outdoors seems to have started as a channel about maintaining lawns, but over the last few years there have been a number of Bigfoot related videos uploaded on there, one of which I may or may not be discussing later in the list. And whether they're real or not, some of them are pretty entertaining. We get some genuinely creepy sounds in this video. It definitely sounds like something or someone is howling in the distance. If I heard sounds like this while I was in the forest, I'd just turn right around immediately. This guy sticks around until it's like fully dark and the sounds just get louder and louder. Real or not, it's definitely a creepy video. Number 8, the Jefferson County report. Next up, I have another report detailed on the Bigfoot Field Researchers website. This incident was reported in July of 2021, still pretty recent, in Jefferson County, Ohio. A man describes finding a large footprint in his chicken coop, as well as all of his chickens having gone missing. He's quoted saying, "On July 9th at approximately 10 a.m., I noticed my 5 chickens were missing. The chicken coop was full of feathers, but no bodies or blood. I did a perimeter check and came across an extremely large footprint. I went back to the house and brought down a tape measure to the footprint and measured it and took pictures with the tape measure beside it. The footprint measured a length that was apparently 18 inches with a width of about 9 to 10 inches. A Bigfoot investigator named Jim Thompson came to investigate the man's property and discovered more footprints that were about 4 feet apart from one another. That's about double the gait of an average person, by the way. On July 24th, a couple weeks after making his initial report, the man described hearing strange yelps coming from either end of his property, as if they were yelping back and forth to each other. And he also said that on some nights he gets an eerie feeling that something is watching him. I have that almost every night too. At number 7, we have Susan Ferenchak. Suzanne Ferenchak is a former skeptic turned Bigfoot enthusiast. After spotting a strange hairy creature near her home in Loudonville, Ohio, she had first spotted what she described as a big black-furred creature jump over the road. Not sure where said road was exactly, or what type of road it was. If it was a highway road, that would be nuts. It was just a small dirt road. Still scary, not quite as impressive though. Suzanne has recorded audio of what she believes to be a Sasquatch while out in the wilderness near her home, and has shared the 2-minute clip online. I give it a listen. The quality, not great, but it's definitely eerie. You hear this distant howling. It definitely doesn't sound like a wolf. You also get some classic, whoops in there too, which a lot of Bigfoot researchers describe Sasquatches, making. Whether it's a genuine Bigfoot or not, I really just dig supposed Bigfoot audio. I just imagine being out alone in the woods at night and hearing some distant wail and whooping, and human or not, I mean, it'd be pretty bone-chilling. All right, now I'm going to share the last report from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. At least for this video anyway, there are tons on the site. This one was reported in Mahoning County, Ohio in July of 2021. Sorry if I'm messing up the pronunciation there. A man had described seeing a strange creature one evening after returning home with his wife, and is quoted as saying, "Tonight, yet another sighting by our pond. My wife and I were at dinner, and as we arrived home about 8:30 p.m., a large, fast, gray and silver, light brown, covered in fur Bigfoot darted from the bushes in our front into the cattails in our pond on all fours. We both looked at each other and said, 'Did you just see that?' The subject was down low and bent in the middle as it moved. Unlike a dog, its undulating movement was not as fluid as a dog. It was not a bear. It appeared to be from 4 to 5 feet at the back and torso built like a barrel. When it went into the cattails, we were no longer able to see it." Number 5, the 1992 Grassman sighting. Grassman is again the name often given to the big ape-like creature or creatures that so many Ohio locals have spotted. And in this video, taken in eastern Ohio in 1992 by a man named Don Keating, he had spotted what looked like a large hairy creature walking into the forest. He managed to capture it on camera, and though the footage is very grainy and he was a fair distance away from it, there is definitely something walking into the forest. It's not the most convincing video evidence. It's hard to tell what you're looking at, but I do always find something eerie about old 90s VHS footage, and Keating seems to believe he saw some kind of large cryptid. So this video was featured on Monster Quest and features an interview with Keating describing what he saw and that he was a skeptic before this encounter. I always like it when they say they were skeptics before, because, you know, it's a bit more convincing that way. At number 4, we have the famous Minerva Monster case. Back in 1978, a family living in Minerva, Ohio, reported what they believed to be a large, Bigfoot-esque cryptid around their home. The Caton family reported rocks being thrown at their home by the creature and would spot large footprints in their backyard. But there are other reports of a mysterious creature in the area around the same time. The Caton's neighbor also spotted the big hairy creature, as well as other residents of the area. The case became known as the Minerva Monster case and gained rather significant media attention at the time. A former Stark County sheriff named Jim Shannon, who had responded to one of the Caton family's reports, is quoted as saying, "They were terrified. I will always believe them. They saw something. It's just, what did they see?" This case has become the subject of a 2015 documentary called Minerva Monster, directed by Seth Breedlove, who we might be talking about in a bit. Next up, we have Mark DeWerth. Mark DeWerth is a Ohio Bigfoot investigator who has collected a fair amount of evidence in the 30 years he's spent on the hunt. He's got footprints, audio recordings, and of course his first-hand encounter, which was the catalyst for his research. The story is he'd been exploring an old strip mine in search of badger dens, was followed out by something which soon stood up and looked at him, a big bipedal hairy creature. If that happened to me, I would not go looking for the creature again. I would move out of Ohio the next morning probably. Thought of an 8-foot tall hairy beast roaming through the woods has always been kind of creepy to me, but having one stare at you in a cave, imagine looking through a cave thinking all you're gonna see that day is maybe some badgers, and then you're met with an 8-foot tall hairy ape man glaring at you. "Only I'm allowed to find badgers in this cave." Whether the story is true or not, definitely a terrifying image. A video shared by Spectrum News shows Mark talking to several residents of Warren County, Ohio about his experience with this elusive creature, as well as hearing some of their first-hand accounts. He plays an audio recording, which sounds, again, pretty creepy. I love me some Bigfoot audio recordings. Anyway, Mark DeWerth has been interviewed on tons of podcasts discussing his Sasquatch experiences, so seek those out if you're interested. And at number 2, we have the Seth Breedlove encounter. Seth Breedlove is a filmmaker who's gone on to shoot a series called The Bigfoot Project, which you can find on a YouTube channel called Small Town Monsters. Before he had his first encounter, Seth described himself as a skeptic. In a YouTube video uploaded by Ed Ballant, Seth recounts the time he first encountered what he believes to be a Bigfoot. Seth had been riding down the countryside of Minerva, Ohio, when he spotted what looked to be a large bipedal creature with brown hair running through a clearing on a hill about 50 yards away. And it was fast, clearing the space in less than a second. One of the things that really stuck out to Seth most was the creature's very noticeable musculature, especially in the bicep area. And coming in at our #1 spot is the Salt Fork footage. This video, once again uploaded by the YouTube channel We Do It Outdoors, is only 10 minutes long, but there's a lot going on with this one. So 2 men were exploring Salt Fork State Park in eastern Ohio, and after hearing some strange noises, they happened to capture footage of what looks to be a large bipedal hairy animal. We have a few different pieces of evidence in this video. We have handheld footage of the creature moving through the trees. We have some drone footage, lots of sounds too. It's a very meaty video. Now, could it be a big guy in a suit? Look, it can always be a big guy in a suit, but I gotta say, if it is a suit, it's not a bad one. It's pretty good. It looks like it has some bulk to it. It doesn't look like just one of those generic gorilla suits you can pick up at Spirit Halloween. And what I like here is that the footage is clear. He's not relying on shaking the camera around or making the video extra grainy to try and obscure the image. And just for those reasons alone, I like this video, even if it isn't real. We also hear some vocalizations going on here, so like I said, it's just a lot happening. Check this one out over at We Do It Outdoors.
Number 7. Crybaby Bridge. Locals say if you stand on the Alliance Area Bridge at night, the sound of crying can be heard. Some say that mothers who did not want their sons or daughters during the baby boom would toss them from the bridge into the river below in the dark of the night. Others believe the cries stem from members of a cult kidnapping locals and ending their lives as part of their secret ritual. And finally, some say ghostly cries stem from a distraught mother who lost it after her daughter would not stop crying. In desperation, she tossed her over the bridge to her death, and upon realizing what she had done, the woman reportedly drove off the bridge her own life. This is all around sad and creepy, but if I heard crying noises without anyone around and on a bridge nonetheless, I would be terrified. Number 6. Old Chestnut Grove Cemetery. The story goes a woman accused of witchcraft was executed and buried at the cemetery. The townsfolk did not erect a marker, but instead built an iron fence around her grave, which was next to an old tree. An indentation next to the tree inside the fence marks her grave, and it said that bad things will happen to those who get close to her grave. Another variation of the story says that several witches were executed and buried here, and their ghosts continue to haunt this area, which does not shock me. Not only did this happen, but on December 29, 1876, the number 5 Pacific Express was traveling over a high bridge, carrying approximately 159 passengers and crew when the bridge collapsed. It sent the train and the people on it into the ravine below, and 92 people died. Many were burned alive while trapped inside the crushed cars and are buried in a mass grave at this cemetery. Due to this, people have seen ghosts of the passengers, and unexplained voices on tape have been recorded. Number 5. Malsalon Public Library. Let me just say, there's more than books in this building. Before it was a library, it was a house, and former residents Clara Baldwin Barrick and Annie Baldwin both died in the home. Clara lived in the home from 1895 to 1909, and her daughter-in-law Annie died in the home in 1931. This might explain why this place is haunted. Some visitors have heard footsteps or smelt an unfamiliar perfume. Employees get a chill with no explanation in the outreach room located in the basement of the former home. A patron once claimed to have been pushed by an apparition while in the library, and a security camera in the library caught the elevator traveling to the 3rd floor at 3 a.m. The doors opened and a bright light could be seen, and the phenomena has been caught on tape several times, and there is no explanation, and that is just like an immediate no. Director Sherry Brown, who has worked at the library since 1979, said she was working in her office, a former bedroom of the home, after the library closed when she thought she saw an employee walk past her office door. She yelled out but got no answer. When she investigated, she found no one. Paranormal investigators have conducted research in the library and have gotten responses from the ghosts during electronic voice phenomenon sessions, and if you thought libraries were boring, let me just say this one definitely isn't. Number 4. Lock 4 Park. An incident occurred here in 1857 which has resulted in the park being haunted. A canal worker, whom some say was the lock tender, may have been angry about the potential of work being shut down and wanted revenge. The angry worker doused his fellow workers with a container of acid or some type of caustic liquid. It said the enraged worker tossed the lid open and flung the contents on his fellow workers, dumping the rudiments on himself. Legend states that no immediate deaths ensued, but rather the men suffered gruesome, slower deaths that took several days. A few men perished due to their acid-eaten skin and organs. The man responsible also died. Today, screams and moans of those who were burned by the acid supposedly can still be heard by some if they listen closely while visiting Lock 4 Park. Also, the lock tender's cabin, which is located in the park, may also be haunted by the spirit of the angry worker. Number 3. Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle is reported to be the most haunted house in Ohio. Rumors about the eerie castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tiedemann family while living in the mansion. The home was built in 1883 by Haynes Tiedemann, a banker and co-founder of the Union Banking and Savings Company. And let me just add that the house has 4 stories and more than 20 rooms and 80 windows. Now, Haynes allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Lucia, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s. The American businessman would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking the blankets off their bed. And Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974, they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Since reports of hauntings at Franklin's Castle increased, many turned their suspicions onto its original owner. Number 2. Sister Century House Restaurant. Now a restaurant, this building has seen a lot in the past. It was built in 1870 and has been home to several businesses in historic Canal Fulton throughout the years. It currently houses a family-owned restaurant, but was most notably home to a crematorium, which was located in the basement back in the early 1900s. I mean, since this place was once filled with dead people, it's no shock that it's haunted. There have been rumors of shadow people, a poltergeist in the kitchen, ghostly ladies in the basement, the entrance to an old tunnel, and even an unusual room that makes people a bit dizzy. The food, though, seems to be great, as the restaurant has a 4.6-star rating, so if you want to see some ghosts and have a great meal, I suggest you check this place out. And coming in at number 1, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory opened its doors on September 15, 1896 to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system and the 25-foot stone walls surrounding the complex. The reformatory remained in full operation until December 1990, when it was closed via federal court order as a result of a prisoner's class action suit citing overcrowding and inhumane conditions. For example, in the late 1930s, a riot broke out in the East Cell Block. The guards condemned 120 rioters to share 12 solitary confinement cells for 1 week without food or water. This punishment drove many to the brink of madness and death. During its 94 years as a working prison, 154,000 inmates passed through the gates of the Ohio State Reformatory. Many died of diseases like influenza and tuberculosis, some went mad, others ended their lives, and at least 1 inmate lit himself on fire. Just outside the reformatory, there are 215 numbered graves. While visiting, people have reported being pushed and punched by unseen forces. Many claim to feel a chill while on the prison grounds. People have also heard cell doors slam shut and seen dark apparitions. Even the road leading to the Ohio State Reformatory seems to be haunted. Local legend suggests it's the ghost of Phoebe Wise, a notorious hermit and eccentric. Number 10. Newbury Airplane Boneyard. In Newbury, Ohio, resident Walter Saplata hosted a collection of military aircrafts from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Though often called an airplane graveyard, Walter would have preferred the term sanctuary, as he was saving the aircrafts from being turned into scrap metal. The sanctuary featured approximately 20 stray aircrafts that Walter collected from his scrapyard job in Cleveland, junking thousands of warplane engines that were declared surplus, according to his son Wally Saplata in a November 2007 issue of Air and Space magazine. Walter used to open his property to the public, but in recent years, the aircraft boneyard has been kept private. He passed away in November 2010, and today it is unclear what remains of the aircraft graveyard. Number 9. Geauga Lake Amusement Park. What was once the world's largest theme park is now an overgrown land of decaying roller coasters, empty concession stands, and abandoned ticket booths. In 1925, the park cemented its place in amusement park history when the Big Dipper roller coaster was built. At the time, it was the largest roller coaster ever built, but soon tragedy struck. Following all of its success, the park experienced some setbacks. In 1942, the park was hit by a tornado, 6 people were injured, and the park experienced a lot of structural damages, around $50,000. Further tragedy struck in 1952 when a massive fire engulfed parts of the park, destroying many key features of the park, including the famous dance hall, the theater, the roller rink, and the bowling alley, amounting to $500,000 in damages. From 2000 to 2004, the park was expanded and became Six Flags Ohio. From 2004 to 2007, it became known as Geauga Lake again under the ownership of Cedar Fair. But on September 21, 2007, Cedar Fair announced that the park would not be reopening, and it has been abandoned ever since. Number 8. Cincinnati's abandoned subway. In the 20th century, Cincinnati decided to build a subway system after canals quickly became even more of a nuisance than they had been when they were bringing in trade. The plan was made in 1912 to build a 16-mile rapid transit rail system in a loop around the city, with a branch undergoing and heading downtown. More than 80% of the people of Cincinnati said yes to the new railway, but work on it didn't start until after World War I on January 28, 1920. Despite several delays, the 2-mile underground portion of the subway was completed in 1923. Proposals came and went in the 30s, but none were implemented. A 1948 study finally ended the Cincinnati subway for good, though efforts to do something with the tunnels have been constantly ongoing for more than half a century. Ideas have included a bomb shelter, a shopping and nightlife district, a massive wine cellar, and more rapid transit. The latest proposal is for another subway. I-75 was built, destroying a large segment of the underground passage, but one of the city's best-kept secrets is the fact that sections of the original subway still remain, including all 4 of the stations put in during initial construction. Today, all these passages are sealed off, and they are used by Cincinnati Waterworks only. Most of the entrances have been gated or concreted over. Now, access is both illegal and extremely difficult, and no people, this is not a challenge. Number 7. Chippewa Lake Park. Tucked away in the Medina County, there's a rusted, lost, forgotten Ferris wheel. What was once Chippewa Lake Park is now just a few piles of amusement park ruins and the lone Ferris wheel. From 1878 to 1978, the amusement park was a popular, thriving destination for family entertainment. It closed after the final owner, Continental Business Enterprises, closed it due to lack of attendance. After the park's closure, its rise and structures were left largely untouched and unmaintained for over 40 years. Today, remnants of it creepily stand abandoned, rusted, and long forgotten. And fun fact, in 2008, a cast and crew from Los Angeles filmed the horror film Closed for the Season there. Number 6. Kerr's Run Colored School. This schoolhouse for Black American children is one of the oldest remaining in southeastern Ohio. Currently, it's boarded up and overgrown with brush. The school educated children from the 1st to 8th grade, including James Edwin Campbell and James McHenry Jones, 1st and 3rd presidents of what is now West Virginia State University. The school remained in operation from the late 1880s through the early 1900s, and in 2007, a historical marker was added to the school's site. The sign briefly documents the history and legacy of the school. Now, the school is right beside an old church, and you can visit outside, but you shouldn't try to enter either building as they are in unsafe condition.